This is the strategy inside everything. I'm Adam Pierno. All right, welcome back to another episode of the strategy inside everything. This is going to be a fantastic conversation, and I know that it will be because we've already been having the conversation for nearly 20 minutes before we remembered we had to stop and press record. So I am excited to introduce today's guest. Katie Dreke has joined us today. Katie, how are you?
Hi, good. Good to see you.
Katie is a global strategy and innovation consultant, and she is currently the first and best employee at Dreke, DRKE, which we were discussing. But leading up to that work and the work that she's doing now, she's had roles at places you've heard of, I'm sure: Nike, Adidas, Droga 5, Wyden Kennedy, other places that I covet and wish I had on my resume. So very nice to meet you, Katie. Thank you for making time for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun to meet you and to be invited.
Yeah. And would you, as we get up and running here, would you give people a little bit more depth on your background and kind of the path of your career that it's taken up till now before you launched your own shop, if you would?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm originally from Seattle, went to the University of Washington, got married, had 2 kids, settled down, and realized there was one more thing I really wanted to do if I could, which was to live and work abroad. And I spent a good year chasing that idea and really hunting down a role that I could do internationally, which luckily led to a job offer from Wyden in the Netherlands. And so I moved to Amsterdam with the little ones and spent 4 years in Amsterdam. Part of that time was at Wyden. Part of it was down the street at another agency called 180. I also spent some time working at Adidas in a global role, running global digital strategy in the media team. After that, I was offered a job with Droga 5 in Sydney. They had a new leader named Sudeep Gohil, who was also a planner from Wyden, who we knew each other through kind of the Wyden network. They had won some really large accounts, national accounts like Qantas and Woolies and Telstra, and they wanted to bring someone from abroad. And so I very quickly raised my hand. I was done with the rain in Amsterdam and thought the beaches could be kind of nice. And we'd never even been there before. But we packed up the little ones and shipped out to the other side of the planet, which was a fantastic adventure as well. And just learned a lot about that part of the world, and also got to work on some cool stuff out of Singapore. We pitched and won the Tiger Beer account. So there was a lot of really fun culture, lifestyle, nightlife, alcohol sort of research that we did all across Southeast Asia.
Wow.
And then got a job offer from Nike to return back to the Pacific Northwest and be closer to family again. That was about 7 years ago. Joined Nike in the brand innovation team, moved into running global media through the Olympics in Brazil. Then was asked to take an assignment abroad in Japan, lived in Tokyo for 2.5 years, running the media team there, or sorry, not media, but membership, setting up membership for the first time outside of the United States and getting that running, and then spreading that across a couple other markets in Asia. And then was returned back and worked in global media team, rebranded the program, helped get it set up for a relaunch. And then my last remit was a reorg into the Nike Women Business Group. So that was one of my high points actually of working at Nike, was being a part of launching for the first time a women's capsule collection for maternity for the pregnant athlete. And so it was a 7-year ride. It was a very exciting ride, lots of diversity. I did not expect to have 6 jobs in 7 years. I actually thought I'd arrive and I'd be in a lane for a while, because that's what you always hear about going from agency to corporate. Yes. Things slow down and you're in a track. So choose your track mindfully. But I'm here. I don't know whether I'm an anomaly or not, but that was my experience. And so basically it was like 20 years or so of agency experience, digital agencies, ad agencies, and so on. And then a couple stints on the client side.
Do you think that the 7 jobs that you had there over 7 years, because you're pretty adaptable, you're the rest of your resume, you've covered a lot of ground, innovation and media and strategy. You're a bit of a Swiss Army knife. That's meant as a compliment. Do you think that those 7 roles you had in that in that one company, the fact that they changed your track, was that part of the reason why? Would they be like, oh, Katie could do this, Katie could do that?
I think it was part of it. When I reflected back on it, now that I've left the company and I'm in business for myself, I think that was part of it, that I kind of acquired a bit of a, people could anticipate that when I would be put on something, I would attempt to look at it through a different lens, that I basically would apply an innovation approach, whatever it might be that they're asking. But there were a couple of those jobs that I actively chased. Like I actively and passionately chased the job opportunity in Tokyo. I wanted that job.
Yeah.
But most of the other ones I was moved. And so it was like, wait, I was just getting, okay, okay, I'll start over again with a whole new group of people and a whole new leader and a whole new agenda. Okay, get into it, get going, make some, move the needle, get some momentum, get some traction. Oh, what? I was just getting started.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go do this other thing. So I guess I learned a lot about how to really get stuck in quick, try to figure out what those quick wins are that create confidence and momentum. They may not be the silver bullet, but if people don't feel a sense of momentum, they start to give up too soon. So you got to go in and you got to get a little something. And also, once someone tells you it's time to move on, don't hold on. It just create pain for yourself and pain for others.
Everybody
just learn to let
you,
go. You just got to let it go.
What do you think?
And have faith that what's in front of you is also going to be, amazing.
What you just said is remarkable to me about, you got to get those quick wins. The way you're kind of able to recall those bullet points of, oh, this is what works internally. How has that changed now that you're consulting and you're on the outside again, consulting organizations as a voice of the, a neutral observer, if you would?
Yeah.
How do you apply that? How has that changed how you think about their business and their brand?
Yeah, I feel like it's so funny. As you're saying that, these three buckets popped into my mind. One is pulling from muscle memory of, almost 2 decades working in an agency environment. You get really good and quite natural at being the outsider who's meant to be the service provider, the provocateur, the insight, the person who sees it clearly because you're not in the woods, all that kind of stuff. So there's that. Then there's the experience I had at Nike, being moved around a lot and being the new kid a lot. Yeah. And having to start over a lot.
You're like a military kid.
Kind of. Yeah. Just moving around I got to make new friends. Okay. I can do this. And so, now when I'm interfacing with clients, it just kind of feels like I've been put in a new job. Oh, what's your name? How long have you been here? How does this team interface with the other teams? If I was an actual employee on that team or in that company, I would be having the same experience as I am as a consultant, because we're all working through our computer screens. The fact that I'm not there in the office is the same as everybody else.
Yeah, nobody has that advantage of the water cooler anymore.
So it actually doesn't feel, disconnected in any way. And then the third bit is just what COVID has done to everybody psychologically. We're all a little off balance.
Yeah.
Business is a little trepidatious because they can't project as well as possible. There's a couple more X factors involved in every equation we're working on. So because of that, me coming in is not you're either yay, the outsider's here, they're going to save us, or, oh shit, there's an outsider here, they don't know
what
anything.
What are they doing?
What are they going to do here? Now it's well, it couldn't hurt to have another good brain on this, is more the feeling I'm getting from people. So it's kind of okay. I can pull from my history. I already know how to work this way. And working in innovation is messy. And that's kind of been where I've dabbled or really tried to steer my career as best as one can do such a thing. And I like the messiness. I think I get a lot of energy from the entropy that's going on. And then there's always an interesting moment of taking this messy, organic, alive, flexing, evolving thing.
Yeah.
And then it has to plug into an operationalized entity that is doing everything it can to just hold its fixed position and be really efficient. And that's a whole other dance that requires a different skill set.
Yeah. How does that, do you like that part as well? Or do you like finding the mess and figuring out how to navigate the mess and turn that into, oh, here's the problem at the center of this mess?
Yeah. I think as I've gotten older, I guess I should say, let me back up. Where all the juice is for me is in the front end, in the exploration and discovery.
Yeah.
And I think there's been times in my career where I've actually tried to stay away from the operationalization part because it just was harder for me to naturally do. And also it felt like that was the part where you had to make Sophie's choice a lot, and you had to pull some of the magic out of something in order to make it fit the machine. And it wasn't as much fun, I guess. But now I'm finding actually the fun in that really difficult challenge, because that's where the scale is. And so if you want to, some things you want to make them small and precious and keep them small and precious, and there's less editing to be done. But if you really want to make a stamp in the world, you really want to change a behavior. And this is where a lot of like the stuff around purpose comes into play for me. Like, you want to get a company to use different kind of energy, or to use a different manufacturing process, or to use different logistics, or to create a new business model. Scale is required to turn something on that really changes the headspace around an entire industry even. So I have forced myself to reevaluate my relationship with the operationalization phase of this work, and to just find the joy in it, create the joy in it. And it's not always easy, because it is not my DNA wheelhouse, but I'm making it something I'm good at anyway.
Is that part of what you're discovering through consulting, or did that already start in your last job and you're realizing like, oh, I was successful because
That was my lesson from Nike. Nike was the largest organization aside from Adi that I'd ever worked at.
Yeah.
And because of the impact of culture that Nike has, the scaling of solutions and ideas and opportunities is really where, just like the benefit of going through the hard work of working at a company like that is to see something happen at a really large scale. So in order for that to happen, I had to get over something that felt prickly and friction filled. And I don't know that I've totally mastered it yet. I still kind of bristle sometimes when I have to do that kind of work, but I certainly understand why it's important, how to do it well, what it looks like when it's done well, who to partner with, how to assess whether it's working. Mm-hmm. So I've got my suite of tools that I can lean on. But it wasn't something I knew going into Nike. I think it's really Nike taught me that. And
as you're moving forward and you're figuring out what you're going to do next. So right now it's Dreke, but who knows what the future is for you? Are you leaning into more of the exploration part and trying to find those, or are you looking for those opportunities where there's an operational element that because you want to either see it through or pick up on an insight and help scale it, the solution for it?
Now I have to admit, I'm looking for, it's almost like when you worked at an agency and you're like, we have this amazing creative idea, but there's no production money.
Yeah.
So it's like that creative idea is amazing. I'm so happy we had it. No one's going to see it. We're not going to make it. I've realized the bigger scale version of that, or the large brand or operationalization version of that, is you can do a pilot program, but if you don't operationalize it, it's like it never happened.
Yes.
So
you can have you end up with the best deck in the world of results that nobody will ever know. Yeah.
I ran a pilot program for 6 months and you're like, congratulations. Then what happened? Nothing.
Yeah.
So like I'm now seeking out the opportunities to take a seed to a scale responsibly. Not everything needs to scale. And some of that is a negotiation of what does scale mean for this particular situation. But I'm realizing it's just without that hard work, or at least the work that's hard for me, things don't become real enough to be satisfying. So I am kind of looking for those things. I mean, there's been a couple, that's been the funny thing about going from working at Nike to being kind of, I'm calling it rewilding. I'm rewilding myself because I used to be in the wild and working on agencies and all different kinds of brands. And then you kind of get married and you work on one brand for a while. And then you're kind of like rewilded again.
Run free, Katie, run free.
Run free, touch every flower. And so, and so I've been doing a lot of conversations. I'm talking to companies that I would like to work with someday and introducing myself. Hi, I'm a free agent. Maybe we could work together someday.
Yeah.
I'm fielding phone calls and even instigating phone calls with recruiters. Hey, just wanted you to know what I know how to do. You're out there talking to people. If anything seems interesting, ping me. Maybe we can make something interesting happen. I'm doing interviews. Like right now I'm coming into, the final stages of a couple really interesting roles that are really totally different from each other, but either one could be
I'm not at all
potential
surprised.
Jumping off thing. So you're like, okay, I'm not sure what that means either. I'm just going to keep following this path and see where it leads. And then I've also talked to a couple other scenarios in which are things I had never even dreamed could be possible, where you kind of coordinate and collaborate with like a VC who says, could we create fractional relationships with our portfolio of startups? You could give a third over here and another third over there because they need your experience, but they can't pay for you, full time. And maybe you don't even want to go full time. And so these scenarios that I couldn't even conceive of, like a year ago, I'm kind of playing around with all of them just to kind of see what feels good. And in a weird way, as a kind of a strategy person who's kind of was so-called trained, as much as you get trained as a strategist coming up through agencies, it's more like you're guided and you're pushed off the ledge. And
yes.
Occasionally you have really good people you can model yourself after. But through that training, I just feel like I'm applying that sort of method or process to myself. Okay, there's a brief. What's the brief? I'm now in a pivot from one type of employment to another type of employment. What do I want that future employment to be? Oh, I'd like it to be sustainable in the fact that I have 2 kids and I'd like to see them every day.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and I have outdoor ambitions. I like to go camping and hiking and do things that take time. I want to be able to indulge in that. I used to like to travel. I'd like to be able to travel again. I have, certain things that I feel like are important to me. So I have given a brief to myself to try to figure out, how do I create the next chapter of my career that fits into this brief aspiration?
And
so in order to solve that brief, it's like, go do some discovery.
Yeah.
Go do some research, talk to people, try some things. I've taken on a couple jobs where I'm like, nope, not going to do that again. Hell no. Like I'm cutting that was potentially even a part of my past, but I do not want to revisit that work ever again. I've moved on. So, but I wouldn't know unless I had taken that brief, did that work, had the experience of not enjoying it and not wanting to touch it again.
Is that work that you've decided to leave behind? Have you decided you're past it because you've already done it and experienced it and you can do it? Or is it now that you've had other experiences in between, it's just not your cup of tea anymore? Or were you able to figure out what it is about those projects?
I think it's a force ranking because, after having bopped around, like you kind of pointed out, and I can do lots of different things, but I now have a finite amount of time because the brief that I've given myself is to work at a really high level at slightly less than full time.
Yep.
And hopefully maintain, a financial comfort level that still allows us to not change radically our living and still gets my kids into college in a couple of years. And so that's kind of the brief at the nuts and bolts level. And so you're like, okay, I need to find work that pays well and pays for what I'm able to do and commensurate value of what I'm providing.
Yeah.
Not all of the things I know how to do can be graded equal on that scale. And also I get different joy from different kinds of work now too.
And intellectual satisfaction, I would think, right?
Intellectual satisfaction. Yeah. And I'm just, again, being a person who kind of chases things that haven't been done before. I do tend to lean into, well, I have no idea how we do that. I want to do that. As opposed to, I spent 20 years in advertising. Why don't you give me a comms brief? I can spit that out in a couple hours and that'd be really efficient. But I don't know. I mean,
I feel
unless
like
it was for something really meaningful, I'd like to move on from that.
It sounds like what you're saying is you don't want to redo the things you've already done and that you've become really skilled at, but you want to build on those skills as a block to the next problems that you'd like to solve. Is that a reasonable?
Yeah. And I think there's, as always with our new, always evolving, always flexing communications landscape, it's more like being a chef in a kitchen where you're reblending and you're recombining and you're hybridizing things that have been done before. There's so many conversations, like even right now, just as a tangible example, what's the deal with social and all these new platforms, and what's the deal with audio, and what's the deal with NFTs? You know, everybody needs to try to figure those things out. Those are really interesting conversations when you're trying to take, let's say, a startup through that landscape, or you're taking a 155-year-old legacy brand through that landscape. That can be really fun. But some of those briefs can also be just like, wah, wah, you know, like, I've seen this a million times. So it's kind of about the twist.
Yeah. And I wonder, you know, when the NFT things, I got a call from a brand that said, we're interested in NFTs. We have an idea we want to talk to you about. And I just thought, I don't want to get pulled into 20 phone calls in which there's nothing is going to come of this. And I know it already. No, I'm going to pass. I'm very busy. How important is it, going back to your comment about the operational side and figuring out how to scale, you know, create something that will live and will create an impact? Or how important is that to you versus creating innovation ideas or territories for innovation that could be fertile and explored through research, but maybe you don't know how certain, you're not quite certain that a company really is ready to jump and do it?
Yeah. I'm very concerned with like the purity of either the problem or of the solution. So you could kind of come at it forwards or backwards.
Yeah.
You can like sweat the solution, or the product idea, or the white space, or the service proposition, whatever it is, like really refine and make it gorgeous, and then test it, and then have a really strong hypothesis that it's exciting for more than just the people who've tested it, and then go scale. But you can also go the reverse to say, and this is also, again, the moment we're in, this is some of the stuff that really gets me excited. Like sustainability as an environmental issue is a huge problem. Food deserts and nutrition in our cities is a problem. Our healthcare system and having it be, you know, democratized and affordable for more is a problem. Those are scaled problems that need solutions. So you could take the size of the problem, feed it into sort of the innovation, almost like bring it upstream into the innovation timeline or slipstream, so that as you're solving in a mindscape of scalability, not a hypothesis. You know, there is a scaled need for this, and that's baked into the beginning. Other times it's a hypothesis. We think there's a big need out there for this, or we'd like to create a big need for this.
Yeah.
And so we're going to kind of incrementally twist and turn our way forward, and potentially even build with a cohort of passionate users and kind of go that way. And I think both are really compelling ways forward.
Yeah. But for you, it's about figuring out something that could be executed versus working towards something.
But the most important thing is the purity of the thing. So if there is a scaled problem like food deserts, don't minimize that problem. Don't rub off the edges. You don't pixelate it. Make sure it's totally respected, and every like pain and agony associated with that, from like malnourished families and education problems and multi-generational inability to like have a better enhanced life than your previous generations. Like those are like searingly terrible things.
Yeah, they're scary.
don't rub the edges off of that. Bring that pure need and passion drumbeat all the way through every pivot point. Or the other way, which is like, we have a really strong belief that the world needs this. Nobody's asking for it yet, but we have a hypothesis that it's so. Believe. Don't rub the edges off of that belief. Keep it pure. Don't let the fact that it needs to scale decouple critical pieces of DNA and break down the purity of the thing.
We could get buy-in if we changed it to this.
Yeah.
And then later on we'll build on it.
If we weren't so vigilant about basically the reason we started doing this.
Yeah.
Millions more people would want that. Was like, okay, don't give up on the purity of it too soon.
Yeah.
Don't let the dollar signs or the pressures from VCs, for example, like cause you to have an identity crisis. And I think it's interesting to try to shepherd inventors and innovators through that space, because the idea came from somewhere. Don't let it completely morph into another animal that you don't even recognize your own child as it like comes out the other side.
Yeah. Well, the pressure from VCs or from the organization or the business pressure to potentially change the shape of it, turn it into a Trojan horse that you think, oh, there's a reason why we're doing this. But 2 months later, nobody remembers why. You end up with the thing that's not what we wanted to make.
Yeah. And humans, at the end of the day, we're trying to make things for people. Mm-hmm. We're people making things for people. And we're also people that interact with a bunch of stuff, make choices to download something or not, buy something or not, have an experience or not. We're searching for experiences that feel real and tangible and rich with humanity. Maintaining the purity of the problem or the idea helps you connect. And also gives you something to do good marketing with, because without that, you're like, why are we even doing this? I mean, I'm sure you in your history have been given briefs where you're like, the world does not need this.
Yeah.
Why are we spending $2 million creating advertising for something that's a new color? Like, so what?
It's because it got away from the purity of why we created the thing.
Yeah.
Or why we should.
It's not a compelling story. It doesn't matter. It's wallpaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sad. You just made a lot of people really sad, Katie. A lot of people that are listening to this are like, I'm working on that right now. Do you think, you said something early on about the exploration phase, and you said, I'm just kidding. You thought there was a real gotcha coming at you. You mentioned the idea from going from the exploration phase to operational scale. And I was thinking about the exploration phase and searching around, and one of the outputs that you might be searching for is insight. And in advertising, the insight looks a certain way a lot of times. You've seen this from a lot of different organizations. Is the size of the insight, or does the insight take a different form on something that achieves that level of scaled operation? Or is it pretty consistently the insight is about people need or people want or people behave like this, not like this other way that we thought? Is it pretty consistent in your experience?
I think it depends a little bit what the insight is about. Mm-hmm. If it's about a human insight, then I think, and I'm thinking about like through the lens of ecosystems now. So I'm thinking of like, there's a brand and the brand has these touch points and sort of like way stations where you can spend time with the brand. And each of those sort of nodes in the network is an opportunity to reinforce something.
Yeah.
If you're creating a product, your product is one of those nodes in this system. Does the product reflect this human insight? Does the website communicate and function to support that human insight?
Right.
Does the app, when you download it and it onboards you into the ecosystem, is it asking you questions that reinforce that insight?
So for you, it's about purity up and down, like make sure that you're consistent, you're holding to.
You can. Yeah. And let's think about this. People are ecosystems. I follow you on Twitter, for example, or I listen to your podcast, and then I might run into you and we might have a beer. And then I hear about you through other people who we have shared relationships with. maybe you write something and I read it. So if you were to sound like a completely different human being in all of those places, I'd be like, oh my God, what? This person's schizophrenic, or is this person even a person?
Yeah.
Because I can't put a finger on them. I can't understand them and relate.
You can't get a sense of the person. Yeah.
You can't get a sense. So a brand needs to kind of think about, like, if we're a brand that's all about simplicity, privacy, and joy, I don't know, picking 3 words out of the sky, then that would inform the app download experience. I download the app. Is it simple? Is it private? Is it joy? Like the onboard, are they asking me a bunch of really weird questions that make me feel like, oh, my privacy is being infringed upon?
Yeah.
Is this a joyful experience? Are they using language that's like, hooray, you filled out that form, good job? You know, or is there like a little haptic shake in the handset that kind of gives you a little virtual, oh, we just gave you a little virtual hug. You know, like there's all these, it's kind of like it informs so much of what we do. It's also, if that's who we want to be and how we want to be recognized and measured in the world, then it's also, as you do, you know, voice of the consumer checks and diagnostics on each one of these nodes in the system, the in-store environment and all that kind of stuff, you can check on how are we doing with the privacy? How are we doing with the simplicity? How are we doing with the joy?
And make sure each of those tenets is being held up.
Make sure they're working in harmony. And then let's say culture shifts and now everybody's maybe less joyful, they're more sophisticated and serious, and we feel like our brand needs to evolve. Well, then you'd have to kind of reassess each one of these touch points and say, how do we not turn it from black to white overnight and relaunch from joy to sophistication, but how do we slowly turn the dial so that in a 6-month, 12-month moment, the consumer would feel a natural progression that matches the progression they're actually experiencing in culture and in life.
And how are we measuring it over time to make sure we're keeping pace with that expected change or that understood change that's happening?
And that the nodes in the system are kind of marching forward together roughly in a similar progress. And I'm talking about this as though it's easy. It is so not easy.
Well, I think that's what expertise is like. I think expertise is the ability to take something really complicated and distill it down to very simple, like here's 3 bullet points that pretty cleanly explain it. But yeah, that you just explained 18 months of focus groups and all the M&Ms you could handle in the
And it's really hard. And I have to say, it's really hard for reasons that are so valid, which is each of these different nodes in the system that I'm kind of describing. And maybe I hope I'm not using language that's really off-putting to people. It's like too sterile or something, but they all come with their own sort of like functional expertise. Like the store environment has a functional expertise. The digital environment has a functional expertise. Copywriting, visual branding, all this stuff, right? Product creation. So when you try to get them to step away from their product expertise and into a shared space of collective journey mapping, customer experience.
Yes.
That can be, and I've witnessed this myself, that can be traumatizing for people. Like they are so uncomfortable. Some people are excited by it, even though they don't know what they're doing, they kind of leap in two-footed. And I'm so thankful for those people because they give me juice in a way that I can't get from other ways.
Yeah.
But I also recognize, having tried to bend the quarterback for these kinds of assignments, like there is trepidation, there is resistance, there is wholehearted rejection.
Yes.
And I feel like that's actually one of the new bodies of work for our industry, to bring the brand to life in a way that's maybe not been done so well before, or we haven't seen it in its most greatest brilliance yet. Because
it's so hard to exercise. It's so hard to execute.
It's hard. You need, as the quarterback, sometimes I felt like I needed a therapist, because you're absorbing people's frustration. You're trying to assuage their confusion. You're searching for the way to describe things so that everyone who speaks radically different languages in the room can understand it the same way.
Yes.
And feel a sense of skin in the game and excitement for it. Having a purpose associated to the work helps, because the purpose can be the thing that stitches everyone together and gives them a desire to try.
It creates a common language and a common thing that's outside of their area of expertise, so that there's some framework that it's like, I'm a copywriter, so I think about it in these terms, but I know what I'm aiming for. And so does the person who's thinking about at shelf and what that's supposed to be like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're smiling because you're so clearly explaining I think what falls apart for agencies, and especially as agencies work with their clients, is what does strategy mean? Where does strategy begin and end? It's such a stupid conversation that absolutely is critical.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be but if you don't have it, that what you just described never gets off the ground. If everyone doesn't know how to brief the different individuals uniquely, which is why I love hearing different type of strategists talk about solving different types of problems, because then I'm able to go, oh, that's right. Someone who's making a product needs a digital product needs a totally different brief than someone who's thinking about a retail experience. Like, you can't just expect a creative brief to solve that or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very respectful of the specific discipline, like the strategists that sit on top of specific disciplines, like comms planning.
Yes.
Is a specific discipline that requires a certain strategic mind, can think very fluidly and really understand all the different channels and mediums and formats. There's social strategists that need to sit on top of that discipline, which is it's so fast. And they need to be a master of a totally different kind. Brand architecture strategy, there's business strategy. So the strategy. Okay, so there's a lot of different.
What do you do with all that
There's a lot of different kinds, right? And so, in a weird way, to match my Swiss Army format, Swiss Army knife, it's like I was introduced to brand strategy within the creative realm and branding, advertising. And it feels like unintentionally, I've just been on a journey to see how far the rabbit hole goes.
Yeah.
Because it's really, for me, what strategy is, it's about looking at a scenario and moving the camera around to different viewpoints. If you move the camera over here to this elevation level, and then you pull back to the International Space Station, you can create a macro strategy.
Yeah.
If you zoom in and you focus on this one particular node in the network, you can write a strategy for that node.
Yeah.
Taking into account the other continuity between nodes.
Yeah.
And that there's a macro strategy that's saying, we're going for more engagement. We're going for more conversion. We're going for higher retention.
So those nodes have to connect to that macro strategy, right? Yeah. One has to feed the other.
Otherwise, each node will have their own strategy and they'll fight.
And there's no brand.
Or they'll conflict. And so they basically neutralize each other, and nothing meaningful takes place. So then there's also the dynamic of, well, if you're a global company, what's the global strategy versus the regional strategy, the country strategy, the city strategy? Because the globe needs to say, everywhere we want to drive this sort of macro agenda. Then you go to a certain place in the world and they're like, that's actually hyper relevant here or not relevant at all here. Right. Therefore, we have to figure out what our localized strategy is that still feeds into the macro agenda, but is relevant in this city.
Driving our part of the business, yeah.
And driving our part of the business meaningfully while not disagreeing with where the global strategy is going. So it's about moving the camera around a lot. And so because I've worked in roles that are about the macro, that are about the discrete digital advertising, media, and about the node in the system, like the app, and then the membership program that cuts through everything. It's totally horizontal. It touches everything. I enjoy now. I don't really want to stop moving the camera around. And so even if somebody gives me a brief that's a very discrete brief, I still move the camera around to interrogate that brief. And if the brief doesn't say, here's the thing we want you to do, and it doesn't tell me, well, what's the global strategy? What am I plugging into? Oh, there isn't one. Well, okay. Well,
That's a problem.
time out. Let's back up a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not your vision for your next thing, probably, it sounds like you've ruled out the idea of the orchestrator quarterback role. It's more of diving in and kind of throwing your elbows around and finding the edges of the problem is what I'm
not actually against the quarterback role. Now that I've taken my lumps and I've learned a lot about it, and I can anticipate some of where the traffic jams are going to be, so they don't stress me out, and so I can maybe even try to avoid some of them. I also just think it's not a bug, it's a feature. Like, it's just part of the process.
Yes.
And so not seeing it as a problem, but just as, it is what it is. It's how we get from point A to point B, whatever. It has taught me to just forge on. And I'm excited by the idea that it's hard. I'm excited by the idea that there aren't experts in this space, that there probably won't be experts in this space because it keeps changing so much. And I have to say, that's one of the things that really drew me to digital in the beginning and now into this work now is there will not be experts. If someone posted this week on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, he said, if somebody is claiming that they're an expert, they're lying. And I think I came back to him saying, yeah, they basically just outed themselves as a charlatan.
Yeah.
Because it's changing too hard and too fast for anybody to know everything.
Yeah.
You need to know enough to be dangerous and know how to get to the bottom of questions. But
yeah, I've said nobody's late, but some people were early. But nobody's like an expert.
Yeah, and there's no resting. You have to keep going. Like a shark. You got to keep moving. Otherwise, it's hard to have a sharp opinion.
Are you the kind of person, when you get a simple problem, do you still move the camera around until it becomes like, create it as a challenge for yourself, like get it to the point where you're really beat it up so much that you're going to just give it the same rigor, even if it was, the simplest problem that you're like, oh yeah, this brief was correct from the beginning. This was perfect.
Yeah. I just don't like solving in a vacuum. And so I actually was given a brief recently that was 2 sentences. And I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I don't like this. This is now I'm triggered. Like I need more context, so much more context.
You kept scrolling, trying to scroll and see if there's got to be another page, or maybe go back to the email.
There's just these 2 sentences. This didn't work. Tell us what we should have done. And I was like, I have so many questions right now. So I to get out of my own head, I just listed all of my questions. And then I thought, okay, if I could get another 15 minutes with this person, what are the most critical questions I would need to ask? So then I got to my short list and I was able to get 15 minutes with this person. And so I said, here's my questions. I need these answers if you're willing to give them to me. And they said, yep, here they are. Here you go. And it still wasn't as much as I would like, but it was just enough to where when I was asked to now come back with my response to that brief, I was able to say, all of you people that I'm presenting to, you all worked on this thing. You know why it didn't work, and I don't. So here's how I'm solving this. I am going to recontextualize this assignment based on what I see and from an outside in, and I'm going to solve it from my new contextualized point of view. And some of what I might be hitting on, you'll be familiar to you, and hopefully much of it is stuff that you hadn't thought of.
Right, or one of you knew about, but the other 8 of you didn't know about.
Yeah. What I was hoping to do is basically move their camera to a new angle and reframe the assignment in a way that and I said that what you're asking me to do is 20/20 hindsight, and how many people ever get to do that? So, okay, I get to do that now, and here's what I would have done differently. But that brief really freaked me out. Like, it's 2 sentences.
It's amazing and terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, this is so clean. It's too clean.
Yeah. Well, Katie, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I am glad we got a chance to speak. So thank you for making time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun on a Friday.
Where can people find you online or wherever you'd like them to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and the things. It's usually first name, last name is my handle. And then I have a little, just a one-pager website that's just kind of holding ground on the World Wide Web for now until I can figure out what I want to do next with that. And it's drke.co.
Yeah, I will link to all those things in the show notes. But it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you again.
My pleasure.
Strategy Inside Everything is produced by me, Adam Pierno. If you liked what you heard, please leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast. It really helps. If someone shared this with you and you're just not sure where you can find it, you can go to specific.substack.com and sign up there to get episodes before everybody else. For more information about me, Adam Pierno, you can go to adampierno.com. There's information about my books, my speaking, and my strategy work. Have an idea for a guest? Send it my way. Just go to adampierno.com and you'll find a form there that'll help you connect. Thanks for listening.